Good evening, race fans. Welcome back to another RDC After Hours video, the show where we chat about random F1 things and just have a good time. And folks, silly season came early this year. So if you're an insanely normal and well-adjusted person, you might not have heard about any of this. But if you are suffering through the no race week and you are desperate for some F1 content, then you will definitely have heard some of these rumors that are going around. Yes, rumors are going around again. And this time it involves changes in the driver's market, almost akin to when Lewis Hamilton announced he was leaving to Ferrari, and it created this huge chain reaction throughout the grid. Some people are taking it all the way to that level, and frankly, it's not that deep because literally nothing is confirmed at all. But people love to speculate, so obviously the rumor has gotten crazy. But I'll give you the general gist, and then we can sort of all give our thoughts on it. So the British press, in particular the race, has been starting to really speculate a lot about Max Verstappen potentially going to Mercedes next year. And the main reason for them saying this is that Max Verstappen, for now, has a contract with Red Bull until 2028. But supposedly, there's a clause in that contract that would allow him to leave before that, apparently as early as the summer of this year. And that clause is that if by the summer of this year, the summer of 2025, Max is not in the top 2 of the Drivers' Championship, then he can leave freely, which is crazy, in my opinion. And it's frankly not looking very likely right now for Red Bull because McLaren are monstrous this year and both of their drivers are great. Things could change. Things could certainly change. I mean, it's Max Verstappen we're talking about, but it is looking likely that he will be third. Unless Red Bull brings some crazy updates, and I know they have updates planned, I think, for Imola. But right now, as of April of 2025, it is not looking very good for Red Bull. And the other part of this is that George Russell does not yet have a contract after 2026 with Mercedes. He signed his current contract in 2023 and it was a 3-year deal. So in 2026, his contract with Mercedes ends. Get it? Like Mercedes-Benz, but without the B. Mercedes-Ends. I don't even know why I bothered to try to be funny. And so far, George has not re-signed anything. So what it's looking like is that Mercedes are sort of waiting to see what Max does. And if he does choose to leave Red Bull in the summer, then they could easily sign him and get rid of George. So who knows? This might be Toto Wolff's big chance to get Max Verstappen on his team. Literally the one thing he's been dreaming about ever since Max came into the F1 scene. Personally, I am really sad about the thought that it's going to be George who's going to be the sacrificial lamb for Mercedes, but there's obviously a lot of good reasons for that. One is that George's contract is ending. Another is that while George and Max would be an incredibly powerful duo, let's not forget that these two hate each other. They absolutely despise each other. And they would kill each other on the track. They would be sabotaging each other and they would get nothing done. Kimi probably has a much longer contract with Mercedes because he just signed with them. And also he's basically the new Il Predestinato. He's Toto Wolff's protege. He's fought so much for this kid. He has gone above and beyond to tell everyone and convince everyone that this kid is the new big thing in Formula One. Obviously, Toto is not going to back down and give up on him after he's already built him up so much, right? So Kimi's staying, and he would have an incredible mentor in Max Verstappen should he join the team. Also, another reason that people say that it's likely that Max would want to go to Mercedes is because for some reason, everybody seems to think that Mercedes will have the best car or one of the best cars come the 2026 regulation change. Frankly, I'm not sure I know why. Why do people think Mercedes is going to be so powerful? Maybe just because they did it before, in 2014 with the reg change. So maybe that's why. They're just good at adapting to new engine regulation changes. I don't know. But yeah, I guess that would be an incentive, certainly, for Max if he was to go to another team. Also, I don't care that Toto keeps saying that he's no longer interested in Max. buddy, we know the truth. You don't need to pretend. We know. Moving on, because there's a lot to talk about. Of course, there's also the possibility that none of this happens and Max just stays at Red Bull for the time being. And also, now is the time when all the teams are sort of making a choice about when to continue working on 2025 and when to stop work on 2025 and focus on the 2026 regulation change. Based on this situation where Red Bull is kind of under threat that Max might leave the team, I think Red Bull are probably going to continue to focus on 2025 for as long as possible, because they want to make sure that Verstappen can be within the top 2 of the championship so he doesn't have a chance to leave the team. And they want to make sure that he continues to believe in the mission of the team and that he feels like he's in a car and he's in a team where he can keep winning things, which is what Max wants to do, naturally, as any other driver would. So the team needs to prove to him that they can give him that chance. And so I think if 2025 goes well, then Max would end up probably staying. But some other options were also floated around for Max. Namely, another really prominent one was Aston Martin. And there's some obvious reasons for that. One is that Adrian Newey is now at the team. Adrian Newey worked with Red Bull for many years, and it's a big part of the reason that Max won those 4 titles that he does have. And of course, another reason is all the insane amount of money that is being pumped into Aston Martin from, partners like Aramco, but also just from Papa Stroll. The only problem with that is Max would have to be Lance Stroll's teammate, and I'm not sure he's really gonna be interested in that. It is funny because some interviewers have been asking Alonso what do you think about being Max Verstappen's new teammate? And it's like, babes, my sweet, sweet summer child. If Max Verstappen were to go to Aston Martin, his teammate will 100% not be Alonso. Guaranteed. I've also heard McLaren being floated around, which is odd to say the least, because I don't think McLaren are ready to let go of either of their drivers. I mean, they have 2 really star drivers and they're winning races, they're doing fine, they're leading the championship. Oscar Piastri just re-signed with them for a few years. They're chilling. And then the last option that's been floated around a lot was Max Verstappen taking a year off, a sabbatical. He would not drive in the 2026 season, and he would just kind of sit back and sort of see the scope, see how the teams are doing with the new regs, see which teams are ahead, and then strike up a conversation with those teams about potentially joining for 2027. Is it a smart move? Yes. Do I think it's likely? Not really, but we'll talk about that later. In terms of George Russell's options, because he's kind of the other side of the coin in this situation. If he were to be kicked out of Mercedes, the assumption would be that he would go to Red Bull. I don't really know how likely that is, but apparently there have been already talks, informal talks between George Russell and Christian Horner. I don't know what that means, but potentially it means something. Also, apparently, now we're really speculating, okay? Now we're really entering the realm of speculation. It's fantasy land from this point on, folks. But apparently Red Bull in the past, and in particular Helmut Marko, have eyed Lando Norris before. They've expressed some interest. So we could potentially have a situation where George doesn't go to Red Bull because Lando Norris goes to Red Bull. And so we would have Max Verstappen and Kimi Antonelli at Mercedes, George Russell and Oscar Piastri at McLaren, and Lando Norris and presumably Yuki Tsunoda at Red Bull, which is wild. Needless to say, that would be wild. Imagine if it were to happen. I mean, George and Oscar in McLaren would be unstoppable. They would be so good. Theoretically, George could also go to Aston Martin. Weirdly, no one's really mentioning that. I don't know why. I think George would have zero patience for Lance Stroll, but that's a different conversation. What drivers would be patient with Lance Stroll? I mean, Alonso, honestly, I'm surprised he lasted that long. He is fully a saint for putting up with Lance Stroll for so long. And then another situation that could occur, but is also pretty bonkers. For whatever reason, George finds himself in a situation where he gets kicked out of Mercedes and he can't get another seat in the top teams because for whatever reason they close up. Then he could go to like a more midfield team. And what people are suggesting is that he would go to Alpine because they will also have a Mercedes engine in 2026. So there would be that connection with Mercedes, and Toto could be the one to vouch for him and essentially just get him a seat. And also because the current team principal at Alpine is Oliver Oakes, who has already been team principal with George Russell in the lower formulas. So where do I think that Max will go next year? Personally, I don't know if I really see him going to Mercedes. It just seems like a hassle of an operation on all sides. First of all, are we really sure that Mercedes will have the best car? We don't know that. Secondly, do you all see Max wearing black and Petronas steel? Because I don't think he would look good in that. And also, ultimately, as much as Toto might want Max Verstappen on his team, I don't think he's gonna be so willing to let go of George Russell. Like, George is basically guaranteed to give you good results. You know, he's not going to fail you. He's not gonna let you down. So yeah, he might get himself into this gamble by trying to get Verstappen, and it might go south, and then he'll also lose George Russell, and then he'll be left with nothing. So it seems like a bit of a gamble, and I'm not sure if Toto's ultimately really gonna want to go through with it as much as he wants Max Verstappen. But I can tell that he's waiting because he hasn't re-signed George, so he's probably waiting until the summer to see what happens with Max if he really does have that clause and he really does want to use it. So I understand Toto wanting to wait for that. I think that's a good call, but ultimately I don't know if I really see it happening. I think if he were to go to any team, it's slightly more likely to be Aston Martin, mainly because of Adrian Newey, because they've worked together in the past, obviously to hugely successful results. So that would be the main draw, but I also frankly don't see it happening. I just don't think he'll be going anywhere, at least not next year. I think he's doing fine at Red Bull. He likes it fine, and it's just too much of a hassle to change teams right now. And obviously Red Bull will be trying their hardest to demonstrate that they do have a competitive car for the remainder of 2025 and that they will have at least a decent car in 2026. I mean, I don't think Red Bull is going to have a terrible car just because they don't have Adrian Newey. Like, I think they'll be fine. It'll be a decent car. And I think Max will be fine with that because it's Max Verstappen and he knows he can win even in like a mid car. He's done it before and he'll do it again. So I think as long as Red Bull can demonstrate that they're not terrible, he'll stay. For the sabbatical option, that would probably be a smart choice, especially for the situation that Max is in right now because he's about to be a parent really soon. So taking a sabbatical would be a great opportunity, not just to see what's going on in terms of the teams, like scope out the market, but also to spend some time with his wife and his kid, you know? Especially if he really wants to be the parent that he never had, which very cool of him, by the way. But do I think it's going to happen? Absolutely not, because Max is just not that kind of guy. Max loves racing a little too much. He is never thinking of anything that is not racing. At least that's the impression that I get from him. Like, he just doesn't seem like the type who could rest, who could take a break and get away from racing even for a year, because he would be thinking about it all the time. And also, he's like essentially at his peak right now. Like, yeah, it might not look like he's gonna win the championship this year. Does that mean he could not win it again? Absolutely not. If he had a more decent car, or if maybe McLaren wasn't as good, he would be up there. And he is up there. And he's been winning races and he's been getting pole positions. He is absolutely still in his prime, and he is absolutely not going to give away a year in which he could be racing and potentially winning another title. It would just be a waste, and he's not going to do that. So that's my opinion. I really don't think he'll be going anywhere. I think he'll be fine at Red Bull. if they can demonstrate that they're decent, which they will because it's Red Bull, it's one of the top teams. They won't stop being one of the top teams. I just don't see that happening. And the team is already built around him, so he has the comfort of that. You know what I mean? I think these are all just rumors. Like, people are bored. We don't have a race this weekend, so people just want to talk about stuff. If it does happen, you know, if Max Verstappen does manage to use that clause in his contract that he supposedly has, we don't even really know if he has it, and it creates, you know, a chain reaction in the market, well, that's fun. You know, that'll be entertaining. But as of right now, I don't really see it happening anytime soon. So yeah, those are my thoughts about the whole situation. But of course, I want to know what your thoughts are, because that's why we come here to the Race Day Cafe. It's an exchange of ideas, okay? It's an open conversation. It's not just going to be me yapping, because frankly, half of the time I feel like I don't know anything about Formula One, and I would love y'all's opinion. Also, how on earth did we get to 1,000 subscribers? Can somebody explain this to me? Not a week ago, I posted, thank you for 200 subscribers. And all of a sudden we're at 1,000? What happened? Thank you all so much. This is more than I could have ever imagined. I'm genuinely still in shock about it. So yeah, all 1,000 of you, come down here and tell me your thoughts about this whole situation, just to spend the time until race week finally comes around. And for next week, I might have a video, I might not. Don't expect a Miami Grand Prix video, because I'll be pretty busy next weekend. Hopefully I'll be able to do it, but I can't really promise anything. But besides that, that's it for our RDC After Hours. And I hope you all have a restful, non-race weekend. And yeah, I'll see you in Rossiek. Stay fueled, everyone.